I knew I needed the national stage to teach me a lot. National television is so different than local television. And what I got in those couple of years, one being at Good Morning America on ABC, and then one being on Market 161 NBC, taught
Mm.
so many things. One, I knew I needed to make money. When I was at Good Morning America, I was very poor. I remember Emerald Lagasse would be in there in the morning making lamb chops, and they would just like throw the plates away after. And I'm like down there, like, so hungry. Like,
You come across different people in the media, in social media, in TV media, in radio media, in all kinds of media. And some you could kind of see right through as to who they really are. For instance, a person might be branding himself as whatever the in vogue thing to take a side on is at the moment. Or a person might be preaching a value system, but you could kind of just tell they are full of baloney. Profiteering in the media isn't a bad thing. However, I do hold those that don't do the aforementioned on a pedestal versus their peers in the industry that do. My guest today, Whitney Reynolds, is one that I put on that pedestal. Her messaging and her mission certainly comes across sincere, and she doesn't seem to have some sort of hidden agenda beyond that. I am sure she doesn't hate the financial rewards or the fame that comes along with her popularity. I mean, she is a media personality. She chose this life. However, there is a wholeheartedness to Whitney's candor that just bleeds honesty. I think about life coaches and business coaches I see all over social media. Many are friends of mine. They often have great messaging and positive things to share, but they are ultimately looking for their audience to convert. In other words, everything they are doing is being done to ultimately obtain new clients for their coaching business, their podcasts, their reels, their TikToks, their overall demeanor. Again, nothing wrong with that, but at some level, it does undermine what is being said when we know that is ultimately their end game. So where do we go for truly unbiased positive messaging? The Whitney Reynolds Show should be on your short list. Whitney and I have met a few times. I followed her growth over the years and have been cheering for her success. This past year, she has won Telly Awards in multiple categories. She also was nominated for an Emmy. She hosts the Whitney Reynolds Show, which has been aired in many major markets independently since 2012, but then got picked up nationally in 2021. Which was a very proud moment for her and her following, I am sure. She is also a long-standing host of a segment on iHeartRadio, active in philanthropy, a very proud wife and mother, and the owner of a very cute dog. Welcome to 2000% Raise, Whitney Reynolds.
oh my goodness. I think you need to be my new voiceover intro for the show. That was the sweetest thing I've ever heard. And it's so interesting when people are reading about your life.
Yep.
There's been so many ups and downs, but I'm really proud of what you just said because I feel like we do want everybody to come to our table and be a part, and there's no hidden agenda. So
Yeah.
I'm happy that you recognize that.
Well, and I think you're for real, right? I think you legitimately come across as the real deal. I mean, 5 minutes before we started filming, I went to check your Instagram. Hey, is there anything new that popped up? And you got 250,000 followers, Whitney, on your Instagram. But you know what your IG story is? It's not even promoting your show. It's your dog and your kids, I think, watching the Bears game or something like that. I mean, this is a real human being, a real person, not just some, face in the distance. So before we dive into some particulars, Whitney, you seem to have a very dynamic and inspirational connection with your fan base. Let's assume my audience, in totality at least, that doesn't know who you are. Could you share, how do you have this connection with your audience, and, what's your message all about?
So I knew at a very young age, I was one of the lucky ones, I think, that knows what their gift is. And granted, I was young, but I always knew I would be on TV. There was not a day in my life that I didn't know I'd one day be in the host chair.
Okay.
Took a lot of work to get there. But long story short, I had a difficult childhood and I had this moment where I had to really dig deep and believe in myself and believe
Mm,
in my journey that it wasn't over despite what my current situation looked like.
mm,
That stayed with me in that moment, but I kept pushing towards the dream. So fast forward, I had been an intern at Good Morning America. I was a morning anchor outside of Dallas. I had learned how to talk on TV. My dream was really coming to life. I moved to Chicago, had a platform not given to me. I had to work very hard for it, but I was
mm.
on NBC 5.2, which was like their off channel. But I had my own talk show
Yep.
in my early 20s here in Chicago. I mean, the dream was activated. And then I had this aha moment of, I am really called for more. And this is what was a pivotal point for me, was combining the dream and then my mission. And my mission was really to be a safe space for stories for people
Mm,
in similar seats that I was once in, to know that their story does matter. They're seen, they're heard, and together we can move forward. And so that's when the Whitney Reynolds Show was born. I was
mm,
told sexy enough, it wasn't going to make it.
mm.
And then this thing of being my best yes kept me going for 5+ years, many, many seasons. And then COVID happened. And I'd been pushing for national for a long time.
Okay.
And when COVID happened, that's when people needed the word hope more than ever. And by that point, we had rooted ourselves with that in our mission.
Awesome. Okay, so you got to. That was one of the questions I planned on asking you later. Okay, did COVID have anything to do? Because you were already out there, you were already popular. You've been doing this since 2012, right? And then it was 2021 where you got the call to go national. Could you kind of tell us about that progression? So you weren't in just Chicago either, were you?
No, we were in 6 markets at the time, and
Yeah.
every market that I was in, I drove out there, I shook their hand. Like, to this day, those markets
Mm,
are still my jam. I will do anything. I'm going out to Peoria to host their Women of Influence in December. I mean, I still owe Peoria for being one of my first yeses. With the 6 markets that had said yes to me,
mhm,
I had to not only put on my business cap, but also a host. And that's like the weird, I would say, seesaw that I'm in, is I do own my show. So at the end of the day, I'm an entrepreneur, but I also am very passionate about what I do. So when a market would say no, it's like personally offensive, but it's that whole, you can't grow and get more partners behind you if you're only in a few markets. So when I got the call to go national, it was perfect timing. I love the fact that my husband believes in what I do too. He's always been one though that's like, I'm not gonna just pay the bills here, honey. Like, it's one of those things that it has to be, if it's taking your time and your energy and your love, it needs to make money. So when I got
mhm,
the call, national syndication could be very expensive. There are some
mm,
costs that, like, there's a thing that I didn't even know existed called RGB gamut, which is something
mm.
that is not even where the naked eye can see it. But in order to be
Yeah.
a national show, it has to pass that. So the learning curve was really, really heavy. I got the call in 2020, actually, for 2021. So it took us 9 months to get the show prepped and ready for national. But I knew this was my moment and I knew it was time to step into it. And luckily, I had partners that believed in me enough to help me get there with their local funding. And so that was a very fortunate place to be in.
Yeah, and you know what, I was going to ask you about that too. Anybody that's watched any of your shows, even when they're rebroadcast on YouTube, you obviously make a point of showcasing your partners or your sponsors. And I got to think, is that just part of being independent? That's the way it goes. You need to go out there and find your funding to do this, and or else you're funding it yourself, right?
Yeah, no, it is definitely a partnership thing. And cracks me up because I know, I mean, I was always number one Girl Scout cookie sales. And I have to tell you,
Yeah,
like, that works in my favor because I've been in pitch with my sales team. And that's the one thing with having the show with your name in it. It is,
yeah,
they want Whitney. So I come to the table.
right.
I just got a farm as a new partner and I wore my cowboy boots then, brought him out. Yeehaw, I did it. And so
Yeah,
it's one of those things that people look at me and just see the host, but there is like, at the end of the day, I would love to like just say that, someone else is working my sales and that I just
yeah.
back, but it is not like that. No, every partner believes in the show and believes in the mission and we elevate together.
Well, and then also too, if you were to go hire a sales team and you weren't to be involved in that, it puts more pressure on yourself too, right?
Mhm.
Like one of the things, my intuition about you, Whitney, is yeah, okay, you're getting financial rewards from this, but this all started from your heart. You're very genuine in how you come across, right? And as soon as you start taking on expenses, okay, I hired this guy for 80 grand, and we did this and that from a marketing standpoint. Now you got to recover that money, and it puts pressure on the process, in my opinion. Have you experienced that?
Well, it's an interesting thing because where we are now, when I started, would have terrified me because
Okay.
we are a big operation now, and that's whenever I was 23 and starting it, it was a few of us, and actually, three of the people still work on my team that started with me over a decade ago. But we were a small and mighty crew that knew one day all this big girl stuff would happen. But it was also ingrained in me is the reason you see a lot of shows go on a season and off a season is because of ratings and financials. Like, because those really
Oh.
go hand in hand. If you want to have a primetime spot, you have to have that primetime type of show quality. Well, how do you have the show quality? Show quality
Mm.
is coming from funding. And so that is it's all a rhythm in the sense of how it has to make sense. So at whenever 23-year-old Whitney launched the show,
Hmm.
it was literally like, I want to be doing this for the rest of my life. So how do I make this work? How do we not
Yeah.
get over our skis in this moment? Now there are things
Gotcha.
happening, and I'm taping with a live audience in 2 weeks. I mean, that is
Yep.
a whole undertaking in itself. But with that, it has proven itself that, like, I don't want to say baby steps, and I don't want to
Yep.
pretend I'm like the little engine that could, but in
Right.
a way, we have always been chugging along, not trying to get too big too fast, but also knowing that we do need some of these bigger things to be that next level show. I mean, I'm competing in the daytime Emmys now against like people
Yep.
that have
Right.
crazy amount of funding from the network, and we're not in that
Yep.
position. So how do we do it?
Yep. And would your goal say 10, I mean, you're young, so 10, 20 years from now, do you think you would be trying to transition to a regular broadcast network?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think if it makes sense, I love
Mhm.
PBS because it's one of the hardest networks to actually, there's no pay to play opportunity on PBS. And you
Okay.
know when you're seeing the show that it is past Red Book standards, which was a whole thing I had to learn, but it's
Okay.
very authentic. And the cool thing about me on PBS is I'm a different
Mm.
look for them. And I get that.
Yeah.
I got asked to host the Public Media Awards, and that was almost like the biggest God wink I needed because when I was on PBS originally starting, everyone told me, they were like, "You don't look or feel anything PBS." And I remember, like, I knew, but that's what I love is I'm a little different for them.
Yep.
And also, like, I'm meeting a lot of parents that love PBS because they grew up on it. And I think we should start a campaign. I'm just going to say it now. I think PBS should start a campaign that's like, bring them back home. Like, all of us grew up watching
Right.
PBS shows, and then somehow we like went this way. Well, PBS has some great shows, and I'm proud to be a part of it. But we'll see. I mean, I went to school at Baylor. I love Joanna Gaines. I mean, there's a lot of,
Yep.
I was at Good Morning America. I love my ABC family. In fact, my
Yep.
guy that ran camera and floor direction, his side company does my music for the show. So,
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah.
the biggest God gift with age has been where I used to be very, very black and white. Now I'm okay living a little bit in the gray of like,
Okay.
we'll see what happens.
And for those not watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple, Whitney definitely does not look like a regular PBS host. Go look at her Instagram. And what's your husband's name? David. Compliments to David. Compliments.
He is so, yeah, I know. Well,
So,
and when I say look, like it's like my show came originally came on after a sewing show. Like that's like
mhm.
literally it was like how to sew, and then so it's a little different. It's a little different.
But you have a kind of I don't want to say like young and hip, but you definitely have like a contemporary type of you're attracting people to you and you're following. You can see it in your social media, right? I look and see who I know that's following you, and these are not boring librarians, okay? To be able to accomplish that kind of following with PBS as your platform is really that much more impressive, Whitney.
Well, I also do iHeart, and I always say that keeps me really hip. Like my co-host,
Yeah.
who I call my work husband. I mean, he's really hip. I mean, he is the main 103.5 guy, and it's
Yep.
full interview. We have a podcast called Pop and Positivity, and like we're
Yeah.
interviewing like Ava Max, and so all of a sudden, like I'm singing a lot of these hip songs and all this stuff, and then I hear my
Yeah.
daughter. She's singing A B C D E F,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no, 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 because I was like studying up for the song. I'm like, do not sing A B C D E F, please. I'm like, we'll continue with the real alphabet. But I love the difference with being on multiple platforms too, and then launching
Yep.
the Christmas show or the holiday show on WGN, Whitney's Wish List. It's going to be really cool because that is like what Oprah used to do with Favorite Things. This is our take on it called Whitney's Wish List, and it really is all about products. So I love being able to flip a couple plates and show people that we love our show, the Whitney Reynolds Show, and that's why we do everything else. But we all
Yep.
in these other arenas and love that too.
Yeah. And I knew you were on iHeartRadio too, and you just kind of get lost in it because you got so much going on with the PBS stuff with Whitney Reynolds Show right now. It's an exciting time for you. We're going to talk about your new studio a little bit later. You're doing the audience. You just went national. So I think it's kind of dominated the attention around you.
And the big thing that I am trying to always remind myself and stay anchored in, and I remind social, and that's this like funny, the little thing that people don't really realize when I'm giving that motivation on social media, it's normally
Mhm.
for myself. Like, "Stay
Okay.
the course, you'll get through this moment." Like a lot of that is like I read it out loud like 5 times back to myself. But my big thing is that I have been nothing traditional. And I'm
Yep.
totally okay with that. But then to compare myself, like, sometimes when you look at these major national hosts, you think, oh my goodness, I'm
Hmm.
a billboard. So you're like freaking out. Like, how do you get a billboard? Well, then all of a sudden I get a call. Hey, Whitney, we're going to give you 5 billboards. This was this fall. Give me 5 billboards. So being non traditional sometimes works out. And you're like, okay.
That's great. You said something earlier that I want to touch on. Okay. I wrote a book back in 2011, and it's called Paid Training. And the concept is learning the trade of your job, working for somebody else, and looking at your career there under those employers as paid training to go off on your own. And I worked at Arthur J. Gallagher and some other big insurance companies before it clicked. Got all the training I need. I could go do this by myself now. You were at NBC, you were at Good Morning America. Did you have kind of that aha moment where, like, you know what? I'm not going to sit around waiting for these guys to give me the spot I want. I'm going to leave. I'm going to start Whitney Reynolds Media and do this on my own. Or did you do that like in conjunction while you were still working there? How did that all unfold?
A great question. So I knew I needed the national stage to teach me a lot. National television is so different than local television. And what I got in those couple of years, one being at Good Morning America on ABC, and then one being on Market 161 NBC, taught so many things. One, I knew I needed to make money. When I was at Good Morning America, I was very poor. I remember Emerald Lagasse would be in there in the morning making lamb chops, and they would just like throw the plates away after. And I'm like down there, like, so hungry. Like, a little intern. But what the best advice was is if you really want to be on air,
Mhm.
very, very, very rarely does someone transition from a producer to on
Mm,
air on a national
mm,
stage. You just don't see it. A lot of people have the training of different places. And that's really where I took this Market 161. I talked for 2 hours every day. I would
mm.
go in at 2 in the morning because I would produce the show. I drove a convertible at the time. And so I'd wash
Yeah,
my hair, let the top go down because I lived
yeah.
outside of Dallas, drove across the county line, and that
Wow.
blow dryer. And then I would get there, produce the show, and then anchor it. And then on top of that, because it was an hourly job, even though your offer looks like it's a yearly thing, I would then report on midday because I did look at it. If I'm making very little money, let's look at this as grad school. So I
Yep.
how to talk on air and report. The only thing I think was my detriment is I didn't quite grasp how fast technology was changing. So I
Mm,
like learned how to edit tape to tape, which is like totally worthless
mm.
now. Same with like my 35 millimeter camera job. Totally. Oh well. Oh, well, it's a fun talking point, and people think I'm joking. No, it was a true thing. But
Yeah.
that was the only thing is whenever I was reporting, I wish I wouldn't have spent as much time like learning how to edit those tapes because those are obsolete.
Right. Antiquated.
yeah, I learned a ton. And then by the time I got here, that was when the recession was happening and everything
Hmm.
else. So I took an anchor job actually out in Rockford to be the
Mm.
weekend anchor at WREX. And I had them write in my contract that if this dream called Weekends with Whitney, which was just like statuses on Facebook at the time, but if it got, I had an out. And it was so funny because they were like, well, what is that thing? And I'm like, it's just an idea. It might happen. And it
Yeah.
happened. And it happened fast. I only worked for WREX for a few months, it felt like. Maybe.
So what does that mean? It happened. Somebody picked it up. Is that what that means?
Well, I also did real estate videos on the side because
Mm.
I wanted extra money and I
Yep.
things always have. So I was like, I'm going to make some extra money as well. And I was in a house that was in the Gold Coast of Chicago. And I met the
Yeah.
and it's just like, you are too cute to be doing just that. I said, well, I do anchor as well. And I have this Weekends with Whitney, which is more like some videos on YouTube.
Mhm.
And she said, I work for NBC. Would you want to create a pitch and come down and pitch us? And
Wow.
I did. And they said yes.
Mm.
And now Cindy and Matt are my two angels, my TV
Yeah.
angels, and they're still here in Chicago. They actually hear me talk about them quite
Yeah.
often. And I mean, Matt is now at Fox, but they both
Yeah.
were pivotal in my journey. And then I did Weekends with Whitney on NBC for a year and a half. And that taught me so much and made me know I wanted to do the move to PBS and become a mission based show.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Does Matt's last name start with a P by any chance?
You know it, PS.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. He had me guest host on NBC Digital back in the day
Oh,
for
look at us.
before
We were probably in the same little control room at some point.
the whole time you were talking. I was like dying to. Oh gosh, I get to bring that up. No one ever knows that about me. Yeah, and then I think Comcast bought NBC, and that digital station went away. I think that's a story I got, or they just didn't want me on the show anymore. I don't know.
No, what was really crazy timing for me is I had already pitched PBS, but
Hmm.
they hadn't let me know it was ending. So it was like if I didn't pitch when I did, I probably would have been like desperately crawling anywhere.
Yeah.
I went in to that other pitch meeting with PBS very confident, knowing I had a show on another network. And then it was right around the same time. I always feel like God's really looking out for us in that way because it was like perfect timing because I didn't know they were closing up. But I think if I would have been there any longer,
Gotcha. Yeah, and my capacity there was just a guest host. They had a show and they were looking to fill in spots, and he found me, that kind of how he found you, just like around town. Hey, do you want to come on the show?
well,
So,
that's what
um,
I do love about Chicago. And that's why y'all and this group is my home market and it won't change is this city, as we all know, is the biggest, smallest city ever. I mean, everybody, and we all have each other's back.
seriously, it's so damn true. It's so damn true. Well, hey, listen, let's talk about. You referred earlier to your safe space mission, and when you and I have talked about this before this interview, I think this whole everyone has a space at the table and you have this safe space mission that you talked about, but here you are in the industry, newscasting and reporting that many of us on the outside, including myself, would think's a pretty competitive, cutthroat type of industry. And here you are striving with that kind of messaging. Is it just a breath of fresh air for the people around you, or do we got it all wrong and it's all roses and everything we see on TV or assume is bull? Everybody's like you, Whitney.
Well, I have made it a point. Our kid
Mhm.
goddad is Stephen Holt.
Okay.
Some of our best friends is a chief meteorologist for Fox. I mean, that's like when you do air on a different type of network like PBS, you become
Yeah.
a unicorn. So for me, I love getting all my TV friends together and being friends. I would say we're all friends. I was at the Emmy nomination party and I was sitting next to people that were on one station. We were talking with another station. And I love that. I do know that it is competitive. When I was outside of Dallas, it
Mhm.
was very, very, very competitive. And I'm not gonna lie, like my parents or my grandparents owned the car dealership that did some advertising on the
Mhm.
station. I think I was talented, but
Yeah.
as we all know, it's sometimes like who you know, how you get there. And then I have to say, there was this reworking of my brain of I am really talented. And I don't mean like I'm being arrogant here. I am the only one that possesses my talent. So,
Right.
how do I use that to my advantage? And now I walk with a different type of confidence. For a long
Yep.
time, I would have been like, ugh, I don't know. They're so good and they've been in
Yep.
the industry so long, or their parents are this, or, they are, like one thing that I keep seeing on my Instagram is people are like, they were born from Chicago, came back to Chicago, and reporting in Chicago. I'm like, I was born in Podunk, Oklahoma.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
like, so,
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the only, I realize everybody's like trying to find their like upper edge. But like for me at this point, my upper edge is really there's only one me that, and
Mhm.
I think about this a lot whenever I'm working on the back end with my team, because like right before I hopped on this with you, I was reworking one of the scripts with the Ronald McDonald House. And
Mm.
I reworked the whole thing. Now, that would not be the talent of the editor, that she had put it together a whole nother way. But that is where I bring my Whitneyness to the table in a lot of aspects. And I was really proud with how we reworked it. And I think it's going to be much more cohesive and tell the mission a little bit better. And so I'm in a season where I'm confident in my abilities, but I'm also confident in other people's abilities.
Yeah, I gotta tell you what how you just described that is parallel with that humility that you had early though when you didn't think you were good enough. I had the same thing about me, and I think it actually helped me because you know what? It draws people to you. Okay, look at this person's bright eyed and coachable. It's like he doesn't even realize how good he is. Everybody wants to be that person's friend. You know what I mean? And then, like you, at some point, I figured it out and got a little loud. But I was never non humble. But it ended up leading to a company buying mine. I kind of was on the top of the mountaintops yelling, "Hey, look at me, look at me!" And private equity firm came and bought mine. And if I would have kept that lower demeanor about myself, it would never have happened. And obviously, you're in a spot right now where you're picked up national, and you should have all the confidence in the world. So congratulations,
Well,
Whitney.
thank you.
It's awesome.
I'm proud of what it all has developed into, and staying course. And I say this, I want to be doing this for the rest of my life. This is like life's work. Like I don't want to get burned out. I don't want to be 2007 Britney Spears. Like I want to make sure I'm nourishing
Yeah.
my soul, bringing great content. I want to, we see that a lot with people. They get that burnt out feeling. And
Yeah.
COVID, because vacation stopped, became a little bit of like trying to push nationally, and then also, grow the way we were doing, and
Hmm.
raising little kids, doing a move. We bought our
Hmm.
dream home. There was a lot going on that I really felt like, okay, I need to like reel this back. I need to like turn off my phone for 5 days and just really like reset. And one of the ways I do that is spiritual practice. Church
Mm.
anchor in my life. And I'm so grateful I have that, because if not, I would be burnt out, because that's the thing is like, how do I do this until I'm 66?
Well, and what's impressive about you, I already alluded to it earlier. You have this career going for yourself, and you've managed to be married, have kids, have a dog. You know what I mean? You're balancing quite a bit. Congratulations. One of the things that you refer to yourself as, which I think is cool, and I think this relates really to anybody in a leadership role, right? So you're the leader of the Whitney Reynolds Show. You have staff. You have people looking to you. You're not calling yourself the president or the CEO, though. You're calling yourself the chief inspo officer.
Guys,
I'm a,
enough.
I'm a
He goes, if that was on my LinkedIn, I would be fired.
So I'm assuming chief inspo officer means inspiration officer. I'm assuming, right? So how important do you think this is for someone in your type of leadership position, and does that translate to the business world? I mean, you are starting to see. I mean, back in the day, there wasn't human resources directors. There was personnel officers. Well, now it's human resources. I mean, there is an evolution, right? And chief inspirational officer, isn't that what a president should be? I mean, maybe you're onto something, Whitney.
Well, I call it that because of the different, like, one, I do like run the business side, and I do run a lot of different intricate details. I've also learned how to pass off some things to good people, but I still am like going back to the salesperson. I do have a director of partnerships. However, I'm still in that meeting, and I come
Yeah.
cowboy boots on. But the thing of inspiring people is like, I can't be doing a show that I want to inspire the nation, and yet the people that are around my circle are not inspired at all. Like I want to be that vessel for anybody I come in contact with, even if it's pumping gas and a man comes over and asks me for $1. Like I
Mm,
fire that man as well. I mean, that's just the way I live my life. And
mhm.
I think I would even say I'm like the chief inspirational officer of our household too. Like my husband
Yeah.
and I had to sit down, like family meeting this morning. We have a lot going on, Halloween, all that kind of stuff. I'm taping at Disney this on
Mhm.
Friday, which is very
Yep.
exciting. Big
Oh, wow. Wow.
I know it's going to be a week. And it's just interesting because I want everybody around me to be inspired. Like I noticed that a couple people that I'm really close with were kind of like walking around a little grumpy, and that's kind
Mm.
of my job to like inspire them. Be like, hey, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds almost like the opposite of what Ellen DeGeneres was kind of alleged against, last year. You know what I mean? That it sounds like it's been a TV show. It's very, very stressful, a lot of stuff, and everyone kind of turned on her because a few things came out. It sounds like you've taken like a totally opposite approach. Not that I'm saying what was alleged against her was all true or not, but what was said, it seems like you're the other end of the spectrum.
well, it's easy. I'll tell you what. Like I'm saying all this
Mm.
now as if I'm just like smiles all the time. Like knows
Right.
I demand excellence too. And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like I can get frustrated. Like, I mean, we lost two partners this last fall. I'm still human. I'm still a businesswoman. That made
Yeah.
me mad. Now, I didn't
Right.
call and like get mad at somebody. I was like, okay, now how do we make up for these partnerships? How do we, and basically what I did as a business person, I just stepped back from the situation. I am like, okay, I want to inspire those around me. So I like being mad at people isn't working. But I'm human at the end of the day. Like if my
Yeah.
cameraman has like a wiggly shot and that's when the mom was crying and sharing her heart, I will be very upset. But we also learn from that. And I try not to be as reactive, just more so understanding that I'm still human. I can still get mad. But at the end of the day, I want to inspire those around me. And so how do we do that?
Yeah, love it. Love it. Finding that balance has to be key for you, especially you in your position. So, iHeartRadio, PBS, the Whitney Reynolds Show, years you've had guests on your show that I'm sure have inspired many. Let's take this off of Whitney business. Let's talk about who kind of sits with you, or gosh, that was a great story. It's really stayed with you over the years. Now, I'm going to make you pick one, but I'm sure you have a few.
I'm going to Friday's interview, which will air in the spring. I mean, this story is the craziest story. And then yesterday at church, it got even crazier. And I mean, I know you're probably like, how did it get crazier at church? So I interviewed a woman, and I don't want to give away too many details, but she was
Okay.
a woman who was married for years and started watching a TV show about prison dogs. And she decided to start a prison dog nonprofit where you bring dogs into the prison.
Oh my gosh.
In the meantime, she fell in love with one of the inmates. Let's just say that inmate ended up escaping with her in a dog crate, and they were on the
Oh my god.
for 12.
This is an episode of one of your shows next.
It was I'm sitting there eating invisible popcorn. I'm like so involved, and I'm like, and then so I'm at church yesterday, and a guy I had on my show this season who is amazing. His name's Twan. He opened up Viet 5, a coffee shop, and the coffee shop is right next to my church. So after I interviewed him, I said, hey, your coffee shop's right by our church. You should come. Now he goes to church there on the regular. And I'm talking to Twan as we're waiting to pick up our kids from the children's thing. And he goes, oh, yeah, I was at that prison with the dog. Oh, that's not a story. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like, David. I'm like, I mean, it was the most. And now this woman, I mean, the thing is, her story was hard and delicate and all these things, but now she's making change with what she's been through. And that was like, I told my team, I said, we're cutting the two other segments of celebrities because I want this woman for longer. I mean, this
Wow.
couldn't believe the story. And then to know the outcome, because my thing is when we get someone on the show, like if
Mhm.
they had just gotten out of prison, like that might not be where we'd want to feature. We like people to go through the tough stuff and understand what they learned in that and then how they want to inspire people through that. So she is at
Gotcha.
that point, but I was just like in the details, like, oh my goodness. I mean, the fact too that, and I asked her at the end, I said, did you end up writing, apology letters? The only person she got one back from was the warden. And he was like, I forgive you. I hope you're okay. And because when you see her, I would have become friends with her on the bread aisle of the grocery store.
Wow.
I really liked the lady.
Wow,
Mhm.
that is crazy. So listen, you are in, correct me if I'm wrong, you're in a new studio, and is it the Cinespace Studios? Is that where you're at?
Okay, it's right next door. I'm super excited. We're moving
Okay.
studios, which again, going back to this like growing in the right time, like this is huge.
Okay.
So City Studios, which
Okay.
is owned by the Perillo family, who is just doing so many great things for Chicagoland and so
Yep.
and this space is super unique. It's right next to Space. So, they're taping so many shows there. This one's huge, beautiful, secure. We're doing our live audience there in 2 weeks. And I'm super, I mean, this is a big move for us in a way of like show development and show growth. If you saw
Mm,
my current studio, which I would love for you to come by, actually, I've been taking people there. It's so cute. It is like the
yeah.
cutest thing. So I walk away and I say, that's cute. This is big girl next level stuff that so it is it is going to be everything. So I'm really
well, and a lot of people don't even realize those studios are there. There's a big, big production studio area of Chicago. It's not in a space, an area you would really drive past normally. You got to kind of know it's there, but it's quite the deal, right? Right?
it will be the Hollywood studios. It already is, but a lot of people
Yeah.
there. It will be probably deemed the Hollywood studios of Chicagoland or Illinois. I mean, it is beautiful over there and what the Perillo family has done and Stanley has done. It is
Yep.
such a space for anybody that's in production. And there's enough room for people. That's the crazy. It's huge. And the plans where right now they're like in phase one of it. And by the time
Mm.
the final phase, it will be something that you'd want to stay at, even like a hotel and private dining, kind of like a Soho house for TV.
Yep. Well, I know Cinespace a couple years ago went, I think they changed ownership or they were looking to bring in some private equity money, and it came across my desk through somebody and I didn't end up participating on it, but I know they had big plans for it and it sounds like it's all coming to fruition. So that's amazing. All right, Whitney, if I remember, and I am remembering today, I even wrote it down. Don't forget to ask her this because I know she'll have a good answer. I ask all my guests this to end the show. Give us a movie recommendation. Doesn't have to be with anything we've been talking about. Doesn't have to be business, but it certainly can be a movie recommendation from Whitney Reynolds.
Well, I think I'm getting in the festive spirit because I can quote every word to Christmas Vacation. Seriously, Christmas Vacation is what's up. In fact, my family's already been like, "Have you watched Christmas Vacation yet?" And the problem is, like, you really do have to wait until right after Thanksgiving because, like, I watched the not witches. What is it? The Three Sisters. Hocus Pocus. I watched
Okay.
too prematurely. Like once you watch it, it's like okay, now Halloween's
Yeah.
done. And so with this, I'm waiting until Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But that is my go-to. I mean, who doesn't love a little Chevy Chase? I love his humor. I love that we see a little bit of Watertown action in the movie.
Yep.
I mean, or Water Tower.
Water tower.
Water actually the whole thing. Like, yeah, it just puts me in the best mood ever. And it also reminds you that, families are like crazy around the holidays. So buckle up.
Yep. I just got back from Vegas last weekend and I was quoting Vegas Vacation the whole time I was there. And that wraps up another episode of 2000% Raise. Thank you for listening. The best way to support our show is by leaving a rating or review on all platforms you listened on. And of course, by following, liking, or subscribing. Visit us at 2000percentraise.com or at John Cerasani on TikTok and Instagram. And of course, my YouTube channel at John Cerasani's 2000% Raise. Find all the ways to follow today's guests in our show notes. Thank you for being a part of our entrepreneurial journey.